Welcome to the Stop Ruining My Childhood podcast.
A sometimes nostalgic, sometimes cynical look back at pop culture.
Join us as we revisit movies, cartoons, and live-action TV of the 80s and 90s.
Compare them to the sequels, remakes, reboots, and revivals they inspired.
And ask the question,
does this hold up?
Did Hollywood improve things?
Or did they just ruin my childhood?
All over again. My name's Megan.
And I'm Steve.
And today we are taking a look at Supergirl 2026.
2026.
So if you didn't hear last week's episode, we looked at Supergirl 1984, one of the best movies of all time.
It struggled.
It struggled a little bit.
So as a reminder, this is a full spoiler show, so if you haven't seen it yet, pause the podcast, go to the theater, and watch Supergirl 2026. Don't go on the internet and find a free spot to find it.
Yeah, definitely.
Go to the theater like you're supposed to.
Yeah, support artists, you guys. But also, depending on when you're listening, it might already be on Prime, I would guess, or HBO.
Depending.
Pretty soon, I would think. And then you can come back and listen. So let's get into some history and fun facts. History, very recent history, and fun facts about Supergirl. Last episode, we talked a little bit about the origins of Supergirl. So I want to talk for a minute, Steve, and give you some fun facts about this movie specifically.
Sure.
Are you ready for it?
Go ahead.
Okay. So it actually was in development starting in about 2018, which is interesting to me because the TV show ran from 2015 to 2021. So I don't know why in the middle of the TV show they started developing a movie.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I find that very odd. But basically they were going to go from the DCU, the Detective Comics universe.
Well, it's just DC. DC, they're going from the DCEU to the DCU.
So essentially what happened initially is that the movie production sort of started in 2018. They brought on a writer for the film. So they bring in Oren Uziel first, who's hired to write. He did Mortal Kombat Rebirth, Cloverfield Paradox, and an outlier, 22 Jump Street.
Okay.
So a little bit of humor there as well. So he was the initial person hired to write. And essentially a couple things happened. First, Henry Cavill wanted to kind of come back to do Superman, but he had been Superman in 2013, so there was kind of already an age gap there that would have been larger than what they wanted. Because by now we're talking about maybe filming around 2019 and all of that.
Yeah, and this was a huge issue. This was a huge controversy because many fans liked Henry Cavill, and they felt that he really kind of comprised Superman, the look, the attitude, the whole thing. And they really felt, I mean, he's still in great shape. He still looks, good. And so they felt when he basically was sort of fired, but let go at the same time, it was weird. What happened was the showrunner of DC that's overseeing the entire movie storylines changed, and it switched over to James Gunn.
Right. So basically there was a new CEO. Well, so first of all, that they were going to start production in 2020, and that got canceled because of COVID.
Right.
And then what happened is right after that, Discovery and Warner Media merged.
Yes.
And they had a new CEO, David Zashin, and he looked at what was going on with Marvel and Kevin Feige.
Feige, yep.
And he wanted basically the equivalent for DC. So as Steve said, They hired James Gunn. They also hired Peter Safran Comer. So they were the co-CEOs, and that's when they decided that they had an 8 to 10 year plan for the DCU and kind of a reboot of the DCEU.
Peter Safran handles the business aspect. James Gunn handles creative.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So basically, when they did that, they changed the tone of the script, and also another casting shakeup, Sasha Calle.
Yep, Sasha Calle.
So she had been in The Young and the Restless, but she was also Supergirl in The Flash in 2023. And it was kind of assumed that she would take this role again. And basically, James Gunn decided he wanted to go in a different direction.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I don't feel that she was I like her. She wasn't she was fine in The Flash because it's multiversal. So she's playing Supergirl in a different universe.
Right.
That's fine, but she doesn't have the look. She doesn't have they basically redid everything as origin wise. She basically was from a universe where Superman never came to Earth, but she did instead.
Well, that makes sense because I did see The Flash, and I felt like her version is more like tough. Like a tough girl, which I like, but again, kind of not fitting the script is the same way. So then they hired Anna Nagara, who had been writing the Flash spin-off version, and they connected it with the comic, and they wanted it to be a big science fiction epic film because, as we saw in the 1984 version, they went fantasy with that, and it did not work.
Yes.
Like, at all. It was kind of a huge disaster. I also think it's kind of interesting, different people that they looked at in terms of casting. Amelia Jones, who's from Lock and Key, Kaylee Spains, who's from Mayor of Easttown, Meg Donnelly, who I really like. She was in Disney's Zombies, and she's been in Winchester on the CW. Yep. They said that that Millie Alcott Millie Alcock had the edge, but also the grace and authenticity. And they also wanted to have Crypto in there because they wanted it to give her a little bit of motivation, but also to show that this was kind of her only family, right? So they wrote that into the end where she's uncredited of the Superman film. I can't remember which one, Man of Steel?
Yep. It was just Superman. It was the one that was the first Superman. It was the first film under James Gunn.
Right.
Yep. That was with David Corenswet, Superman.
Who I also think did a great job in that role.
Yeah, he did well. Like I said, a lot of people were kind of upset because Henry Cavill, they felt, could have transitioned over. And the controversy behind it was not only that he was well liked, but there was not good communication. It was initially mentioned that, he's going to. And then after James Gunn took over, James Gunn was just kind of like, we decided to go a different way. And no one really told him until last minute.
But also, I will say this, to be fair, and this usually gets talked about, I think, more with women in roles, it has been 13 years.
It has, but the thing is he's still playing action roles. Like, he's like a Tom Cruise, right? He can be older and
but it's not that he's not playing action roles. It's that Millie Alcock herself is like 22.
Yeah. Well, that's what James Gunn said. He wanted to go with a younger version.
I just think that makes a little more sense.
And I think it works out in the long run. I do like David Corenswet, and I think that it works out because the feeling is that they're going to go with a much younger core group. And so he would stick out a little bit more with, like, I don't believe they're not bringing back Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. They're going to go with a younger actress.
They're not going to have Ben Affleck.
They're going to have a much younger. Yeah, they're going to go much. Well, it's interesting because their new Batman is going to be a little older, but not Ben Affleck older.
If it was all 20-year-olds and Ben Affleck as the grizzled, angry Batman, I would love that so much. So they bring on Craig Gillespie to direct. He has, oh my God, gosh, he did one of my favorite TV shows of all time, United States of Terra. That's the one. There's a woman who has multiple personalities, but the direction is just amazing there. Lars and the Real Girl, which has just a lot of nuance. I, Tanya, and also Cruella. The writer on the film also was an actress. And she played Penny in Vampire Diaries.
Yeah, because she has really no writing chops whatsoever. Well, she did a short before this, and that was it. Yeah,
but she originated the role of Eliza Hamilton in Hamilton.
Okay.
And she wrote also some theater. So she has some writing credit. She also...
I think this was intentional because James Gunn's greasy fingerprints are all over this.
So,
and I don't mean that bad. I like James Gunn, but this is... You can tell by the writing of it that there was a lot of influence.
We'll talk about the writing as we go. I think there are some really strong points and there are some sort of weaker points. I'm not sure which are from the comic, so we can get into that in a minute. But in terms of, I just wanted to talk about casting for a second.
Sure.
So Millie Alcock has been in House of Dragon.
Yep, she was fantastic in that.
A show from Australia called Upright. But I will say I actually know her from this show Sirens on Netflix.
Okay.
And if you've seen that and you've seen this, even though her face is so distinctive, she really is an amazing actress. Her role on Sirens is completely like she's like an uptight type A preppy girl who's an assistant to Nicole Kidman and wants to be like her. It's a totally different character and just shows her range, and I think she's amazing.
So it's like a one professional businesswoman working under another professional, that kind of show. Because I'm thinking of a show I saw called Sirens, where they were like actual sirens.
No, they're not.
Like sci-fi. I guess we watch different shows.
No, it's not sci-fi. No, she's more like a preppy sorority girl but she comes from the wrong side of the tracks, so it's kind of like a put on.
Okay.
But and so her sister is a little bit more gritty, like the Supergirl character, so it's interesting. Jason Momoa, who plays Lobo, he was also in Game of Thrones. Chief of War, Stargate Atlantis. Most people know him as Aquaman, but I love that I found this on his IMDb, Baywatch Hawaii.
Yeah,
fantastic.
This is interesting because I'm a fan of Jason Momoa. I liked him in Game of Thrones, which was really his breakout, really.
Yeah.
And then obviously he's been in a lot of other stuff, as you mentioned. But this was an interesting casting because he already played a character in the universe.
Yeah.
Right. He played Aquaman, so it's a major character in the universe. And granted, things have been reset now. But within that, he basically, I believe, he really wanted this role. Yeah. Lobo was a role. Jason Momoa is a comic guy, and he's a sci-fi fan. He's into this kind of stuff, and so he knows Lobo from the comics, and he really liked that character. It was something initially, I believe, he had wanted that role even before he got Aquaman.
Oh, interesting.
And so he kind of pushed for it and rallied for it with James Gunn, and so they did make the transition because I'm sure there'll be a different Aquaman. The fact that he was cast as Aquaman initially was surprising because he does not look like Aquaman whatsoever.
Yeah, the Aquaman is like blonde and...
Yeah, Aquaman is blonde normally. Sometimes he does have a beard, but he really does not look normally like Jason Momoa.
I've seen things from Baywatch Hawaii. I've seen like stills. I haven't watched Baywatch Hawaii, but I've seen like stills of it. And Jason Momoa without the beard, he looks like a frat guy. He looks like, or like he should be in like, I don't know how to, like WWF, but I don't know. It's like weird.
You forgot to mention his biggest movie, Minecraft.
Oh, I didn't.
With Jack Black. That he was
just in. So we also have Eve Ridley is from England, and she has been in things like The Three-Body Problem on Netflix, but also, did you know that she's the voice of Peppa Pig?
I did know that, yes. And I know her from Three-Body Problem because I watched that show. Yeah. It's fantastic on Netflix. But she does have a bit of a smaller resume because she's young. Which
But
is
she's done stage as well. She did a touring. She was in a touring production of Les Mis, so she must be able to sing it too. I would think. Then we also have David Krumholtz as Kara's father. And if you don't know him, he was in the movie The Santa Claus. He did the show Numbers.
Yep.
I think that he's one of my favorite actors. And I think he's so underrated. And every time he's in something, he just stands out to me because he's so great. So that was a little bit of the backstory there about the casting. Can you talk a little bit, Steve, about Krypto, the dog? What's the lore there?
Sure. So Krypto's been around longer than Supergirl.
Oh, okay.
Supergirl, as we mentioned, I'm not going to go deep into Supergirl because we did this when we did Supergirl in 1984.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be redundant. So if you want more information, first off, you should already listen to that episode because it's the precursor for this one. If not, pause right now and go back and listen to our Supergirl 1984 episode. It was last week. But I don't want to go back all over her history. But Krypto, which is a bigger piece in this movie, basically came out in 1955, so 4 years before Supergirl.
So he would have been Superman's dog.
He's Superman's dog. He was Superman's dog on Krypton when Superman was a toddler, and he came to Earth with Superman, or after Superman, but he came to Earth to follow Superman.
In the little pod.
Yeah, and so Krypto basically, and it did follow that, is that Krypto's from Krypton, so he has the same reaction to Yellow Sun as any Krypton, right?
Yeah.
So he can fly, he's strong, right, for a dog. And so you have that aspect. But he initially showed up in 1955 in Adventure Comics 210. We mentioned that Supergirl was 1959 in May in Adventure Comics. So, and he's been in and out of the comics ever since then, really. He would be placed into a comic alongside Superman, almost as like a little sidekick for a while, and he'd be on and off. This does kind of follow because, as we mentioned, or as we'll talk a little bit about as we get into it as well, this movie was based roughly off of Tom King's run of Supergirl, which is Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. The storyline comes from that, and in that storyline, she does have Krypto with her. So it does follow that. They didn't just decide to throw Krypto in here.
Okay.
And my assumption is they probably already knew they probably already were starting this script when they did Superman. And so that's why they had the connection to her with Superman at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Is to set that up. Canonically, they did change it a little bit with the movies, is that that Krypto in the James Gunn universe here kind of looks a bit like a terrier, where canonically, he looks more a little bit like a yellow lab. He's kind of short-coated, a little bit bigger of a dog than the Krypto that they have in the movie.
Interesting.
But the Krypto in the movie is
scruffy.
The understanding I have behind that is that the Krypto in the movie is also it's designed a little bit around James Gunn's dog.
Yeah.
Or the dog he had. And so he added that in. And the storyline behind that, I don't know how the truth behind it as much, but the storyline that's been passed around behind that is that when writing Superman, James Gunn really struggled with it. He had a hard time connecting to the Superman character.
Oh, really?
Until he recognized the dog aspect. And he has this connection with his dog, and he used that as kind of an intro to the Superman character. I don't know exactly how accurate that is, but I've heard that from a number of sources. A lot of James Gunn's characters, especially superheroes, are very flawed, very dark, very...
so that makes sense.
Almost anti-heroes.
Yeah, so
and Superman is not.
Yeah.
Superman is very positive, very upbeat, very truth, justice, American way, right? And so... he kind of used that as my understanding.
So, and then in the comics, did Krypto always have like kind of powers as well?
Yeah, he's always because he came from Krypton.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice.
More recently, they used him in the animated DC League of Super Pets, which was a movie that's been on.
Stop it.
Where he was voiced by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
It's a movie?
Yeah, it's an animated movie where it's all about the pets talking. and they're like doing stuff to help the Justice League. So it's Crypto, the super dog. It's Ace, the bat dog. There's Wonder Pig.
No.
And then there's also, I think there's like a squirrel that's like Green Lantern's pet. And then there's...
Wonder Pig is Wonder Woman's pet?
Yes. Which is a little weird, right?
How have I not seen this? I would watch that. I would watch it. And probably... I don't know if I would enjoy it more than I'd enjoyed this movie, but certainly we could have done that instead of the 1984, and it would have worked out better.
Yeah.
So so it filmed in England. A lot of it was in London. They had to train. We talked about this last time. The stunts are difficult. Mm-hmm. So both of the girls especially had to do a lot of training, and they also had to learn large chunks of alien languages. There's like 5 or 6 different alien languages throughout the film. I also think, and we'll get into this kind of when we do our full recap, that there are, as Steve said, a lot of touches of James Gunn, and I think a lot of the world building, which to me is not the brightest spot in the movie, but a lot of the world building looks like Guardians of the Galaxy.
I was going to say that. The tone...
With the 80s and 90s stuff, we talk about our memories. This is from 2026, and we kind of talked about our Supergirl memories already.
We did, yeah.
But how did you first kind of get into, because you're really into comics and stuff, did you guys have, and now you have kind of a subscription, but did they have that back in the 80s and 90s, or did you go to
I had a lot of comics, yes. I started collecting comics probably, was maybe 12 or 13. And you would go to go to a comic book store, or sometimes also in the mall there was like a Barnes and Noble or Friar Tuck. You remember those bookstores or Walden's Books?
Remember Friar Tuck? I do remember
was like
Walden's.
a Walden's Books.
Yeah.
And they would have comics in there as well.
And Borders.
Yeah, we didn't. Borders came much later for us, at least.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you could go in there and they would have some racks of comics. But we also had some local comic book stores which carried a lot of different titles.
And they weren't too much money, right?
No, at the time, to be honest, I think when I started collecting, they were like $1.25. I think now they're up to
like 3 or 4.
I want to say they're in the 3 to 4. Yeah, mine come by subscription, so I don't even look, to be honest. But it says it on the cover. It always has how much they are. But I began, and I'm pretty knowledgeable with both DC and Marvel because I've collected both. I was a fan of some of the DC characters, and I was also a fan of some of the Marvels.
Yeah, I never read comics. The first, the way that I kind of, my entry point into it was with graphic novels, that I kind of discovered graphic novels when I lived in North Carolina. I was had a group of friends, many of them were into comics and manga and things like that. And so I think the first graphic novel I read was The Watchmen.
Okay.
And then after that, I started reading Neil Gaiman's the Sandman series, and then excellent. I started getting into some manga and stuff like that, and then eventually taught some graphic novels too, because it's school, some more serious things like Notes on a War Story, which is about the war in I think Syria, if I'm not mistaken, and then Mouse 1 and 2.
That's much darker things.
Yeah, but I think and then, now we have a full course, like a full college course on graphic novels. But I think it's a really interesting medium. And I think the history of it is super interesting, too. By the way, if you listen to my other podcast, the Pop Culture Pantry, we look at last week the DC official cookbook.
Oh, okay.
And we talked a little bit about how comics kind of became popular and stuff like that. And to me, it's just a really fascinating history. So that's something you need to check out.
When are you going to cook me that stuff?
I will. Yeah, I have this week is going to be mulligatawny soup, which is Batman's favorite.
Okay.
So that's gonna come up. You cannot have the Kryptonian cocktail, but I do have a couple of recipes for it. We don't drink, but I do have a couple of recipes for it.
So I was initially drawn to Batman. I was initially drawn to Green Lantern, to Superman. There's a number of people in this universe, and then of course over on the other side, I was a big X-Men fan. That was probably one of the first comic books I ever got. But one of the things, that I liked, and I think one of the things that drew me, and I think one of the things that draws a lot of people to comic books is the aspect of a hero, right? Heroes are the best of us. They're supposed to give us something to aspire to, right? When done correctly. Superman is a fantastic a fantastic example of that, right? He tries to see the best in people, right? They stop evil. They protect the helpless, right? And there's something that's attractive to that, right? Especially in a world where that's not how things always end up. And so sometimes now I get a little turned off. I still watch all of the hero type stuff, but I can be sometimes turned off by writers who are trying to make the heroes so relatable that they become normal people. And that's not so now there's not an aspiration.
Yeah, I think that there's a difference between a normal person putting aside their fears and doing something brave, and a hero who's so much of an anti-hero that they're completely dislikable.
Exactly.
Or that, like, okay, you did that, but other than that, you're just kind of normal and boring. Yeah, I think that that's interesting. I also think, like, you kind of have different flavors for different people. Like, there are people who are really drawn, and I know this is Marvel, not DC, but really drawn to Iron Man because there's a little bit of bitterness and sarcasm, and also Robert Downey Jr.'s version especially, right? And then people who are kind of more into maybe mystical stuff might find Doctor Strange more interesting. People who are more about, like, patriotism and the American way might like Superman more, and
or Captain America.
Right? Yeah, those kind of things. So it is kind of interesting. For me, I really like the storytelling. To me, is fascinating, especially when you compare it to mythology, but also the art with the story, and the way that those two things have to kind of work together. I just really love it. I just really think it's really interesting.
And I think that you can still do some darkness, like, Batman is darker than Superman.
Yeah.
Right, just in the way, the storytelling and the way he handles things. But both of them, interestingly enough, have a no-kill philosophy. In the comics, Batman and Superman don't kill.
We'll get into that
intentionally.
In this movie.
Okay. Superman doesn't kill philosophically because he has this sacred respect for all life. Right? Batman doesn't kill because philosophically he feels that would bring him down to the same level as the criminal.
That makes sense.
Right? Yeah. So it's different, but still the same.
Yeah. Which is also kind of interesting. All right. So let's talk about reception.
So reception, I mean, we don't have a ton right now because it's still in theaters. I will say that. But there has been some, on the initial reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, this is at about a 55.
Interesting.
Which is, middle of the road, basically. You're 50-50 almost. That's with 321 critics reviews.
What was the budget?
The budget was about 170 to 186 million. Right now, it's grossed and kind of projected around 79 million.
Okay, but it's only been out like
a week. It could have legs, but the issue being that, again, remember, it doesn't need to hit 186. It needs to hit about 450 to 500 million. Yeah,
this says to break even, maybe 315, 320, something like that.
And that's to break even without making money, right?
The thing is, I will say, there's a couple of things, in my opinion, going on here. One is that outside of Wonder Woman, most of the superhero movies featuring women have not done as well because a lot of women don't love superhero movies, and a lot of men won't go to see a movie starring a woman. That's just how it is. And I do think, again, there's a little bit of sexism going on there. I also think that, movies have cycles in terms of what's popular. And a lot of superhero movies, they became popular, a decade or so ago because a couple things. One, there was a lot of lore and people like you had grown up with comics and things like that, right, from the 80s. But two, we can watch things on our phone.
Yeah.
But you want to go to the movie to experience a big movie,
Yes.
right? And superhero movies do that so that you have something that you want to see on the big screen in the theater or at the drive-in or whatever. But I think what happened then is that the market got oversaturated. I mean, we even talked about this. There was a Supergirl TV show. It ran for 6 seasons. Okay. And then you also had Clark and Lois that was a spin-off of that, and that ran for 4 seasons. So you already had this story being told simultaneous to them developing a movie version of it, and she's in the Flash.
Yeah, I also don't know that it's the right, and this isn't a critique of the movie. This is a critique of the guidance of the entire DC universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
You started off with Superman, which is a great start. And now we've gone to Supergirl without a whole lot of other foundation laid in this universe.
Which is also what they did with the Avengers, or not the Avengers, the Justice League.
Yeah, well, no, they did it better because the Justice League brought in, if you know the DC, the whole DC fandom, right? In DC, they have what they call the big 3. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. Those are your biggest superheroes that have the biggest draw. You need to start with them. The Avengers did a great job because they had a solo movie with Thor, a solo movie with Captain America. Yes. They laid foundation with Iron Man, with well-known superheroes.
Yes. And then they got the team together.
James Gunn is notorious, even with Guardians of the Galaxy, of kind of going with superheroes he likes that are a little bit more abstract. Mm-hmm. But you need to bring in some power hitters first.
Well, what I was going to say is what happened with Justice League, in my opinion, is that you did have Wonder Woman already and Superman already and Batman. But then that movie is structured, and we could maybe do it another time, but that movie is structured completely incorrect. You've got a little bit of Aquaman, and then you have a little bit of this guy, you have a little bit of that guy, and then they all get together, but it's like too much, and they should have done the foundational work before having the Justice League movie. That's my point. But I think that with the market saturation right now, Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, to me, were kind of the apex of things, and that happened in 2019 also, just before COVID closed all the theaters, and it just changed theater going. Yeah, it did.
Outside of Spider-Man, after that, no one is brought in is the big of numbers that they've wanted.
Spider-Man and for superhero movies, yes.
And Spider-Man's always going to draw.
Yeah, but I think you have flooding the market with the 2 TV shows and all of that. But in terms of the movie, Stop Ruining My Childhood 2.0.
The sequel,
the reboot. So out of the 2, which one ruined your childhood, if any?
I've got to say it was the 1984 version, right? Because, I mean, as we just mentioned, we graded, or we'll get to the grades, but, I mean, I think I kind of liked the newer one a little bit better. I liked some of that pieces. And I remember very rose-colored, the 1984 version, and it really did ruin my childhood when going back and re-looking at it, because it was not good.
Yeah, like I said, if you listen to that episode, we talk about our memories, and I hadn't seen it, but I had seen pieces, and I remembered thinking Helen Slater was beautiful and loving the sci-fi beginning part as a kid. I know that I saw at least that bit of it, and it was horrible. It did ruin my childhood because I was really kind of looking forward to watching it, and people said that it was bad, and I thought, well, it's probably bad in a campy way, but no. Her best friend, Lois Lane's sister, Lucy, she was kind of a bright spot. But yeah, definitely improved upon my childhood for the 2026 version.
Yeah, the 84 version was bad in a disjointed way.
This is one of those, I don't know how many of these we'll get where the newer one is actually better.
Yeah.
But all right, let's get into our ratings. I thought overall there was great pacing. I did like the balance between the humor and the action and the heart. I thought that they did a really good job structurally with setting up the characters, getting them together, having them kind of tension between them, and then building their relationship. I thought they did a good job with Crypto, who I really liked. I thought the acting was spot on. The world building was messy. And the story is a mishmash, like we've talked about. I also saw Hamish from the Hunger Games in terms of Kara's characterization. We've got John Wick. We've got stuff that's reminiscent of other James Gunn projects, Harry Potter. I mean, that kind of thing. So I didn't really like the world building. I don't hate the needle drops, the songs that are there in addition to the score. I didn't love the end, but I can see what you're saying about the end too. And I did see one critic who said that they failed to find that emotional depth in their sisterhood, and I do think that is true, and I think they could have done a couple tiny little things to fix that, just a few altered lines. But for me, this was pretty good. I did really enjoy it, and I'm around a B right now.
Okay.
Maybe I'm around a B.
Okay.
I could be persuaded to a B plus or a B minus. I want to kind of hear your thoughts, but that's kind of my grade on it.
So in general, I mean, we as you mentioned, we watched this twice. The first time I went and watched it just to watch it. Right? Yeah. I don't want to take notes and be thinking of my critiques when I'm watching a movie. I want to just watch it for fun
and enjoy it. Yeah.
And so I watched it, and I didn't dislike it. I did like the film overall. I felt it was decent, especially if you're comparing it to the 1984 version, right?
Compared to the 1984 version.
It's a blockbuster.
This is Schindler's List compared to the 1984 version.
And in some ways there are some thematic feeling there.
Yeah.
There's some dark spots here, but I would say there was some downside too. I think Millie Alcott did a great job. I like her as Supergirl. I will say this though. I think Millie Alcott is a pretty girl. Okay, I think she's attractive. I think she's very girl next door-ish feeling, which is what you want in your Supergirl. Okay, I don't think the cinema shots the camera shots did her justice in some areas. There was a couple shots where I was like, "Oh, that's a weird angle to shoot her at."
Well, yeah, I think also because they want to make her look a little rougher because she is drinking and stuff like that.
Yeah, I guess so. I just didn't. I was like, "Oh, I wouldn't have shot that." But besides that, because she is a pretty girl, and I think your Supergirl should be a pretty girl. You could say, you say what you like, but as you mentioned before, right? Comic books and superhero movies, 85% of your people that are actually watching it and reading it are boys.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
And I would say the same thing for Clark Kent, and it's not aesthetically. Clark Kent and Superman have a look.
Yeah,
right?
They do.
Yeah.
And she meets that look, which I like. And I felt that, I mentioned Lobo. I didn't hate it. I was maybe part of it is I had an expectation. I knew how much Jason Momoa was looking forward to playing it. I didn't feel like I saw that in him.
I liked his characterization.
I feel like I don't know. I thought maybe that could just be me. Right? Mm-hmm. Maybe because I put a bar high for him on that role. But it wasn't terrible. I did like it. I'm familiar with the storyline from the comic books, so I kind of knew what I was going to see ahead of time. As you mentioned too, I wasn't a huge fan of some of the choices, like the look of the bad guys that were in this, right? Of Krem and his people. Didn't really buy that as much, but it is what it is. To be honest, the real big negative I pulled out of this was the Superman aspect. Right? There was a number of spots in here where whether it's her blowing Superman's calls off or the dog peeing on the Superman newspaper. There's a flashback where she lands on Earth and first meets Superman, and he's walking her to the Fortress of Solitude. Like, she looks at what he's wearing and says to Crypto and Kryptonian, like, why is he wearing his underwear, right? There's a number of places where I feel like there's jabs at Superman. Supergirl's an awesome character. I feel like you don't have to knock Superman down to make her look good.
No, but the whole point was that she needed to learn that wasn't true. That she's an alcoholic and 22, and this is almost like, I mean, they're cousins, but essentially it's like her older brother who went to Harvard. Do you know what I mean? Like, so then you're reconciling with that. I don't think it was the movie pooping on him. But it seemed like that to you.
It seemed like that to me. I feel like there was a philosophy of like, it's almost like, again, in my opinion, I feel like heroes are something to be aspired to, right? Mm-hmm. And Superman has that high bar. And to look at him through a lens of being like, how ridiculous and naive is this, is to be like, I feel like people who do that, it's because they just know how much they don't meet that. And aspire to it, don't make fun of it.
Right, yeah, that's true. So overall, what's your grade?
I'm going to give it a B-.
Okay.
I don't think it was terrible. I think it was in the B range. It's passing, and it's passing decently. It had some negative aspects. I think if some of those things had been corrected, it could have been higher. And it wasn't terrible. Like, I think B- is good.
All right. So B-.
B-.
Yeah. We can't average the two of those out. 82%.
Yeah.
I guess. So a B- for Supergirl 2026. I would still recommend people go watch this. Go to the theater, enjoy it. I mean, we just told you beat for beat what happens, but there are some great visuals, and yeah, I would.
Yeah. I would, again, we watched it twice, and I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it either time.
No, I didn't.
Right?
No. So what's
coming up next?
Good question. You can support our show over on TeePublic. This week we have crypto-inspired shirts, Super Good Boy, with the ears and the cape, and powered by Bravery and Belly Rubs.
Oh, that's nice.
And you can get the stuff as t-shirts or mugs. We've got a couple different options for you. On my other podcast, I am on Pop Culture Pantry. We are talking about the Little House Cookbook. And we're talking about things like maple syrup, candy making, and all of that pioneer cooking kind of stuff, and why it became popular again. So, so that's what else is going on this week.
If you haven't subscribed to our podcast already, why don't you? It's free to subscribe. So why don't you just click on us and subscribe so you know when we have new episodes coming out. And there's links for TeePublic, and blogs are in the show notes.
And that's free to subscribe as well. So leave a review, especially on Apple Podcasts. For a small show like ours, it really does help us get seen.
Thanks so much.
And we'll see you next week. Oh. Steve. Let's back up. Next week on the show, we are going to be reviewing the new Little House on the Prairie.
Excellent. Yeah,
you and I.
Netflix just dropped a new one.
Netflix is dropping it as we speak. It'll be dropped in a couple days. As you're hearing it, it'll be dropped a week or so ago. But we did do the regular Little House, or the 1970s, 80s Little House, and we have a that you can hear in our archives.
Yeah, we did that during season 1. And will we maybe re-drop that?
We're going to re-drop it on Tuesday, and you and I are going to revisit the show briefly, and we'll talk about it again for a couple minutes and kind of recap our thoughts, or our thoughts now that it's like 3 or 4 years later. Excellent. And then we'll have a better comparison when we do the new one. So That's what's coming up. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
We'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.